How many times do you allow a team member to mess up? It's one of the questions somebody just asked me inside of our Powerhouse Mastermind. It's our mastermind for our $1 million plus business owners. And this is a really great question. So here's what I want to share. My team messes up a lot, but we don't tolerate the same mistake twice. All right. We're also very, very gracious when a big mistake happens, but it's completely out of character. So we work with human beings. There will be errors. And sometimes we just have really high expectations as the CEO, and we have to be really careful. So I remember one time an employee was supposed to open our studio up on a Saturday morning, and she slept in. And everybody was standing outside for 20 minutes. I'm not talking about like a few people. It was like 3 Saturday morning classes were kicking off with like 15 to 20 people in each one. And then these are children. So mom and dad might be there, siblings might be there. Literally, there were dozens of people standing outside our studio, and I was livid. So then I had to rush there on a Saturday morning to open up because we couldn't get a hold of her. Okay, this was bad. This was not a small error. Now, we had a lot of clients affected, not happy, etc. I happened to have a coaching call like that same week with my coach. And I was like, what do I do? How do I reprimand this person? Like, this is pretty serious. And he said to me, how often does this person mess up? And my response was like, never, like literally never. He's like, has she ever done anything like this before? I'm like, no, like nothing, not even little mistakes. Right. And he's like, how did she reply when she realized what she had done? And I was like, oh my goodness, she was mortified. She was apologetic. She felt horrible. She was like promising this would never happen again. Right. And he said to me, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to let it go. And I was like, what? Like, it's so big. What do you mean let it go? And he's like, tell her you get it. Mistakes happen. Obviously, this can't happen again, but she knows that, and tell her you mess up sometimes too. And I was like, this feels very foreign to me, right? To just blow something off that was a big deal. But he was right. And I'll tell you this, she continued to work for me for well over a decade, and it never happened again. It was a one-time thing. And I know that she was grateful the way that I had handled it. Okay. Now, however, that's an extreme situation. There are opposite sides to the story. Sometimes it's the same girl showing up late for the 12th time. So let's talk about what we do when somebody messes up and how we decide, are we letting them go? How serious is this? Is this a fireable offense? Let's go from there. Okay. Now I want to take time today to train and show you what I do in my businesses when mistakes happen. Because again, we work with humans. We are human ourselves. And trust me, there have been many times that mistakes that have happened from team members stemmed from something I said or didn't say. Okay. So mistakes will be inevitable. And I want to make sure you know how to handle it when it happens. Now, they will happen with your new girl. They will happen with a guy that's been here 9 years, a leader, your right hand, even when you mess up. So effectively managing employee mistakes and determining when you have a serious conversation and sometimes when you just let it go, right? It really involves you thinking outside of the box and taking a step back. All right. We're going to consider the nature, the frequency of the errors, right? The impact it had on the business and the employee's overall performance and potential for improvement. I don't need my people to be perfect, but I do need them to be coachable. I do need them to take ownership and accountability and say, I know it was bad. It'll never happen again. And then I need to see it never happening again. Okay. So we're going to break this down into a few key steps. Number one, I want to talk about managing employee mistakes, like the initial steps. So number one, you need to get the info, gather the information before addressing the mistake. You have to have the facts. I work with hundreds and hundreds of small business owners, and I see a lot of them jumping to conclusions, making assumptions, listening to one person's side of the story, and then considering it a fact, right? Hold up. You have to understand, like for me, I'm in the children's industry. So sometimes my facts came from a 9-year-old. Like I have to make sure before I say, hey, the 9-year-old said this and you must have done it. I'm like, I want to hear your side of the story. Tell me what happened. I am going to give my employee the benefit of the doubt before I listen to a client and completely just assume everything she said is true, right? They always say there's three sides, one side over here, one side over there, and then the truth down the middle. So I'm going to make sure I've got everything I need to know as much as I can gather before I like fly off the handle and like start making these accusations and start punishing, reprimanding when it might not even have actually happened the way that I have heard it. Okay. So that's number one. You want to then assess the impact. So, how severe of a mistake is this, right? Minor errors may require simple corrections, while something very significant that maybe tarnished your reputation or something really serious. I mean, I've had employees make like $100,000 mistakes. Okay. So, how severe is this mistake? And then I want you to consider the employee's history. So, is this a one time thing, an isolated incident, or is this part of a pattern? Are you noticing a recurring theme here? And this is just who they are. That makes a really big difference. Okay. So, that was number one. Number two is we've got to address the mistake. So, as we address the mistake, I want you thinking about where is there going to be a supportive environment? How can I create that supportive environment to have this conversation, show empathy, right? Focus on the opportunity to learn here, avoiding blame. Please avoid the blame. Okay. We are asking them future focused questions like, what did you learn? How will you do this differently next time? Right? Asking questions that will become a teachable moment for them. Okay. As you address the mistake, I want you to also document the incident. I'll have clients who say things like, she's just always messing up. She's always late. I'm like, how many times has she been late? I don't know, like tons. And I'm like, but do you have this documented? Could you tell me specifically how many times she's been late? Like, we actually have documents where I could tell you how many times somebody has called in the last 12 months, how many times they've showed up late in the last 12 months. Do you have this documented, or are you going off of feelings, or somebody that's always calling in and then it's like it happened 3 times in 4 years? Okay. Maybe not that big of a deal, right? So we really want to figure out, is this a one-off incident, or does this truly happen all the time? So document it so you go off of facts and not feelings. Then we need to set clear expectations when we're addressing it. We need to communicate, here's what happened. Here's what is expected moving forward. So I'm going to be so clear. So when I said in the beginning, I tolerate mistakes, but I do not tolerate the same mistake twice. Okay. Because I have said, listen, this is not how this should have happened. Here is what I want to see moving forward. I set those clear expectations, and trust me, if that is broken again, if that same mistake is occurring again, I am having a more serious conversation to say, what is going on? So because I've set clear expectations, it is a really big red flag when it happens again. Okay. Number 3, using those mistakes as learning opportunities. So I want you to encourage open communication. I really believe it is important to create a culture where employees feel safe to admit mistakes, right? They feel safe to tell you what happened without you blowing up and making this be this huge thing, or maybe saying something in front of other employees or whatever it is, right? So, how can you be a safe space where they can say, I've got to tell you something. Here's what happened yesterday, right? Because it's very similar to parenting, right? As a child, we don't want to disappoint our parents. And sometimes when you have strict parents, right, you might hide some of the mistakes you've done. I laugh because that was definitely me growing up. I didn't want to disappoint them. So I just wouldn't tell them, by the way, that I did this yesterday. I would never say that, right? So you really want to encourage open communication where it's like, listen, you're going to mess up. You're going to feel overwhelmed. You're going to, right, fill in the blank. You want them to know, it's going to happen. And when it does, you can come to me. I will help you. I will support you. I will fix it. Okay. The next piece of using this mistake is then taking this information and provide training and support. So when somebody messes up, I'm taking responsibility going, wow, do I not have a system around this? Did I not train them how to use the system? Am I not holding them accountable to use the system? So yes, you might be really upset and frustrated that this person keeps doing this it's like, hey, listen, you hired this person and you trained this person. Like you've got to take responsibility. Okay. I would say that's one of the biggest things I see as a coach with the volume of clients we have, the amount of people that come in and take no accountability for the people on their team. And they're like, no, 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 my people, they're entitled. My people, they just expect this. My people, I'm like, you created that environment. You hired, you attracted, you trained, right? You created it. So you've got to understand this mistake that just happened. What part did you play in it? Okay. So when the girls showed up late and nobody could get in and we open late, right? We then learned, okay, we can't just have one front desk person have a key. What if we always made sure that there was always somebody that day that also had a key? So now we have two people every single shift that have a key. So what are the chances both people are late? No, we're picking leaders and people that we trust. They're both not going to be late, right? So we've done a few things where we said, okay, how do we prevent this from happening again? Okay. So with that said, when mistakes happen, I want you to really think, how can I provide training and support? Where did I go wrong? Where is the system broken? What could we have done better? And how do I train and really support them? uh is this getting, maybe you're going to mentor them, maybe you have a leader really mentor them, maybe they've got just a team member who they can work with on certain things, right? So where is the training and support coming from? It is not a you should, this is not a recommendation, right? This is not a you could consider, this is a requirement. We train and support our team. Okay, next, when to have the serious conversation. Hey, are you a business owner that's looking to not just increase their revenue, but actually have it positively impact your profit without you working more? Because let's be honest, there isn't any more time in the day. If so, I want to invite you to my free training called Protect Your Profit. I'm going to be breaking down our 3-part well-oiled operations framework. We're going to be going over the plan, the people, and the process. This training is completely free. We've already had over 100,000 small business owners join us, as this is one of our most popular trainings in You're in Luck, because we've got another one coming up very soon and it will be live. The strategy I'll share in this training is how we landed on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies in America list the last 2 years in a row. And I'll show you how to create a winning team of revenue generators, people that actually make you money, not cost you money, even if you don't think you can afford it. Go to welloiledclass.com and get registered for free. You'll walk away from this session with strategies you can actually implement and apply immediately, as well as I'll be gifting my 16-page hiring handbook, how to recruit, hire, and train top-tier talent. So come hang out with me and a few other 100 small business owners who are all looking to scale their business while scaling back their time. So get signed up for free at welloiledclass.com or click the link in the show notes, and I will see you there. When do we do this? So first of all, this is when I'm looking at frequency of mistakes. If this is a repeat offender, right, I am 1000% going to bring this up. Number 2, how severe? How did this impact the business? Am I losing clients? Right? Are they compromising the safety of the children in the dance studio? Like I had one time had an employee. This was when I first started. It was my first employees. Just didn't show up for class and lied that she was sick, but didn't tell me until like nobody came. So the kids were by themselves and just like held their own practice. And then I had found out she actually went to like a baseball game. And I'm like, right. So what's funny is I fired her immediately, of course. And she was completely baffled. Like, what do you mean you're firing me? Like, you didn't, you left the children by themselves. Nobody was over 18. These kids, they should not be working alone, right? So yes, that was it was a one mistake, but it was so severe, it had to be done. Okay. So you might have a one-off, but it is so crazy that you have to. This happened to me a few years ago. I was just on like such a high with the team. This was in Well Oiled. It was a still pretty small team, maybe like 10 of us. And I said to the team, literally, I finally feel we are at a level where like every one of you in this room, I think we're going to be together for a long time. Like, I don't think there's anybody at the bottom. I don't like, we were just like on a high. Literally the next day, I fired somebody, which can be very confusing when I just make this huge announcement to the team. However, we had somebody on the team that made a very, very, like, I couldn't go back. It was so out of our company values. The mistake she made with a client, I was not, there's just no way. I could not, I lost trust with this person. I saw true colors and we fired her immediately within 24 hours. And again, it's not about just, well, it only happened once. Sometimes it's just so bad, there's just no going back. Okay. You will know if it's bad. Now, another thing that I'm thinking about when I'm having serious conversations or what does this look like is the employee's response. How somebody responds tells me so much. If they're not taking responsibility, if they're not showing improvement, if they're acting like this big thing was really not a big deal at all and I'm overreacting, that's when I go, whoa, we aren't on the same page, right? I want their intensity to match mine. So when the person showed up late to open the building, she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did. Like, she was freaking out. And that to me was an appropriate reaction. If she just like walked casually into the building, remember, I had to bust my butt to get there because I'm the one with the key. This was like, oh my goodness, at least 15 years ago. So I bust my butt to get there. And if she just walked in casually and was like, hey, sorry, I'm late. Holy cow. That would have been a very different situation, right? So their response tells me, are we on the same page? If they know this is a big deal, I messed up, that is going to be a very different conversation than if they're like, yeah, I mean, she's overreacting. That's not what I actually said to the client, right? That is where I'm going to be a little bit more concerned. Okay. All right. Let's talk about conducting the actual conversation when you know, oh, this is serious and we need to make sure we address this. Okay. So with this step, I want you to really prepare thoroughly and take a minute to breathe. If this is serious, you're probably heated up. If this is serious, you're probably very frustrated. And if you're anything like me, you've got like steam coming out of your ears and you are maybe going to overreact, right? This is one of those like, don't send the email, sit on it for 24 hours. Don't have the meeting, like give yourself a minute. I actually just had this happen with a contractor recently. I was very disappointed in just a conversation going back and forth. And I finally just said, you know what? I will respond to this tomorrow because I needed to just take a minute to calm down because I was that upset, right? So if you need to take a minute, take a minute, okay? So prepare thoroughly before the meeting. Review those documented instances, have those mistakes, like everything documented, dates, information, previous conversations. Listen, 2 weeks ago, you said this was never going to happen again. Tell me why this happened again, right? So I want to be prepped and ready to go into that meeting because what I don't want is for them to say, I barely call in. And then I go, well, I'll have to check that information. I want to like open up my pages and go, actually, you've called in 16 times in the last, 4 months, right? So this is where I want to have that information. Number 2, and this is not easy, and it took me many, many years, you need to communicate clearly. You need to clearly explain what happened and the consequences of the behavior if it does not change. You need to set a timeline for improvement and what you expect and outline their steps. Okay, here's what I expect you to do, and here's what I expect to see. The reason I say this was so hard for me is because I want people to like me. And I feel bad saying to somebody, you're underperforming. This behavior is fireable, right? Like if this keeps happening, I will have to fire you. That is hard for me to say. Now I've gotten much, much better. But if that is you and you're like, I go to fire somebody and then it ends up I'm not firing because they convinced me or I just chicken out, or if that is you, you've got to get really, really clear on what is going on. Okay. I have had to have like the bigger we get, it's just, the more leaders that come on, I have had to say things very, very direct. It is not fun, but it is necessary, right? The more money I'm paying people to work here, the more I expect out of them. So I need to make sure that my money is being well spent, and I need to be very clear on expectations. Okay. Now, after I communicate clearly, I need to offer support. So I need to be firm, right? You need to be firm. You need to be like really letting them know, being direct, but you also need to say, how can I support you? What do you need from me in this manner? Like what, or in this matter, right? Um, Moving forward, if I expect this, how can I help you ensure you hit that goal? So this could be additional training. This could be regular check ins. This could be adjusting some of their workload momentarily, right? But these are things where I want to make sure we walk out of there and they understand. Like, I want them to know, wow, this was serious. She has given me expectations and I better ship up, or she's like, get, or what is it? Shape up, ship out. I don't know. But you know what I'm saying? I want them to have that feeling of like, I'm on the chopping block here. If they walk out of that meeting and they're like, oh, things are fine, I'm not getting fired. I haven't done my job. If I'm making them feel like no big deal, we're talking about a serious matter, right? I need them to know, wow, I messed up. This is not acceptable and she's not going to tolerate it again. That's what I need the energy to feel like when they walk out that room. If they don't walk out that way, they're either the wrong person, right? Or I didn't do my job very clearly. Okay? But I do offer support. How can I support you in this matter? What do you need from me? What do you need from me in the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days to make sure that this is happening, right? Okay, and then the last piece of this is follow up. Follow up, monitor their progress, right? Regularly check in, assessing the progress, giving them feedback, adjust the plan. Hey, we just had this conversation 6 days ago and I already see this happening. Okay. Now you might be thinking, but Stacy, isn't that nitpicking? Isn't that micromanaging? Right? Here's the deal. I have to I don't know if I'd use the word micromanage, but I am managing these little individual steps and actions. So if you want to call that micromanaging, sure. But I'm going to micromanage until they show me they've earned my trust. Right? If I'm pulling back the reins because they've made a big mistake, they're going to step backwards a little bit into a micromanagement of, you've got to gain my trust again, right? So monitor their progress, start watching, give feedback, good feedback, right? Hey, 6 days ago, we had this conversation. I've seen a complete turnaround. Or 6 days ago, we had this conversation and I'm not noticing any change in behavior, right? These are things you need to do. And then unfortunately, it's take that next step, take further action if necessary. If they're not showing improvement and you agreed, like when you say, here's what I expect in 30 days, what do you need from me to support you? And they're like, I'm good. I've got this. I can do this. Okay, great. Now it's like, listen, it's been 30 days. Tell me how you think you've been doing, right? I'm going to ask those questions. Fill me in. What do you see happening here? How do you see yourself hitting this goal on a scale of 1 to 10? Right? I'm going to have that serious follow-up meeting to really say, are we moving forward and progressing or are we not? Right? We coach them up or we coach them out. So I am going to watch for the when somebody's not coachable, that is one of the biggest red flags in my company. I would rather take an underperformer who's coachable and takes feedback and improves than a high performer who there is nothing that they are ever doing wrong. Nothing's their fault. It's always something else, right? I would rather have coachability any day over performance. Trust me, the coachable person will get to the high performer. Okay. So that's when you really want to start to take further action of, this isn't improving. Right? This is pretty serious. You may decide to go to a performance improvement plan. You may have already gone to a performance improvement plan. That's a 30-day plan we use to watch progress and have conversations. And let me tell you, we've been 2 weeks into the performance improvement plan, and sometimes it goes downhill. A lot of times it goes downhill because they're secretly looking for another job. So now they already weren't doing a good job with you. Now they're like spending full time looking for another job. So their performance is going down even more. So we've seen this where we're like, oh, wow. One time I actually had somebody take another job while she was on the 30-day plan. And she was trying to like milk me for the rest of my 30-day salary while she was working over here. And her performance clearly went down. We do not keep somebody for 30 days if we're like, what is going on? Right. And then she did admit, well, I knew I was going to be fired. So I started working. Okay, great. Well, let's end it today. Like, do you want to put in your notice? Because you don't get to work for me full time and somebody else full time. Right. So we have those conversations and we start to watch. But a performance improvement plan is probably that next step. And then you watch, are those mistakes being fixed? So I know that was a really long winded answer, but it's not as simple as like, okay, are they allowed to mess up 2 times, 3 times, 4 times? No. Okay. By following these guidelines, you can start to manage employee mistakes effectively while still making them feel like they're being supportive and that it's a productive work environment. Because listen, we're going to mess up, right? As a child, you're going to disappoint your parent at some point, right? You know it. So how can we make sure though, like we're the mom, the dad, right? That they'll still come to and say, Mom, I messed up. Like, Dad, I know I shouldn't have done this. That's what I want to create with my team. I want them to know like she's not gonna kill me, like she's gonna help me. I have to tell her, I want to tell her because she's gonna make it better, right? That's the environment I'm trying to create here. Now, obviously, when it's serious enough or it's repetitive, it's time to get them out of the company. Not fun, not easy. However, it needs to happen. So hopefully this gave you some ideas. I'd love for if you're watching on YouTube, comment below with any big takeaways or ahas that you've had from this video. What is something you're going to do moving forward? And please, if you could, please share this on any platform that you're on, because this is a big thing small business owners struggle with, right? They're not sure. They may overreact. They don't know how to handle, and they might lose a great employee because they responded and reacted poorly. Now they quit. So how can we help make sure we're maintaining a positive environment? It would mean the world to me if you would help me share this message. All right. I will see you next week for our upcoming training.